Marvin Rees is the president of British Exploring Society. He describes himself as the mixed race son of a Jamaican father and a white single mother, and was born and grew up in Bristol. He still lives there. He's married with 3 children and lives in the city. He became a member of British Exploring Society, having joined us as a young man on expedition in 1990 to Svalbard.
And I do trace a big part of my own personal development back to my own expedition in 1990 when I went to Svalbard. Not just because of being in Svalbard and climbing mountains and doing all the rest of it, but actually getting onto the expedition, because I had applied the year before to go to Iceland, but I had no winter experience, and just coming from my background, it's just not something we really had ready access to. A few trips to the Brecons, but that was it. And then over the year in between me not getting on that expedition, I had a fantastic teacher, really saw something in me, Mr. Jennings, and he sent myself and my best friend Tyrone up to Lochiel near Fort William to do a winter skills course. It was in February. And I'll always remember, because I loved this sort of stuff. I just wanted to run around on mountains with backpacks. I was interested in joining Marines at the time. So this is what I wanted to do. And I'll always remember the first day we went out up this mountain in Scotland, and the wind was blowing the snow off the top. It was one of the epic pictures you see. We climbed up, we came down, and I turned to my friend Tyrone and I said, "Tyrone, wasn't that fantastic?" And he said to me through a really small lit Kagul front, he said, "I'm not into it, Marv." that was the end of Tyrone's expeditionary life and the beginning of mine, really. But the mere fact I got onto the expedition was a new world for me, and I imagine that will repeat itself in the lives of many people that go on these expeditions. And what did it give me access to? I just noted a few words down, just the wildness of being in Svalbard, around mountains, the sense of being in a place that was untamed, climbing mountains that no one had ever climbed before. It's very difficult to put into words what that meant, but it just felt like we were breaking new ground. My significance in that moment, the real danger, the possibility of falling down crevasses and never being seen again, the experience of awe, something I talked to Honor about just the other day. All through our expedition, we could hear the crack from the snout of the glacier on at the edge of our camp, and I always missed the front of the glacier falling off. But then we saw these huge blocks of ice one day as they fell from the front of the glacier, and just saw how small we are, the freedom of that space and the risks we were taking. And one of the things that my expedition gave me access to, and a few trips before, was a real sense of the scale of the world, just how big it was and how small the world I was rattling around in was. So I grew up in Easton, just like in the video, someone said they come from the inner city, single mum, not much money. We didn't generally go outside our area very much. But I did take every opportunity I could to get out into the wilds. And I think going up to Svalbard blew my mind, just how big and vast the world was. To stand on a mountain top and look at hundreds of mountains and to see fjords and new ice sheets down there and glaciers was just mind-blowing. And one night it was particularly significant when myself, Jeremy, John and Swithin, 4 of us in my fire, climbed up a mountain. And then we scaled the last couple of 100 meters in time for midnight, sat on the top at midnight while the sun went round. And then we all shut up about 5 to midnight and then started talking again about 5 past. We want that silence. And as I looked down into a crevasse, and I thought I'd never be seen again if I fell in that crevasse. And I felt very, very vulnerable, very small and very insignificant. But the irony was that in that moment of insignificance, I knew I was alive in a way that I hadn't felt being alive before in my life. I mean, I'd always known I existed, of course I had, but I found an incredible significance in my insignificance in that moment. And I suppose the point about fair access to the outdoors is those kind of life-changing experiences are not equally available to all young people when the challenges we take on. I think when we're looking for resilience, it's not just found in imparting resilience to people. People only discover resilience and develop it with opportunities to be resilient in healthy ways, hopefully. And I don't think there's any more healthy way really than getting out into the wilds, realizing your significance in your insignificance, and overcoming, and not just overcoming alone, but overcoming together. And certainly for me, it was such a huge part of my own personal development.
She's one of our young explorers. It seems a really good place to start with a question. She asks whether there are any situations you can think of in your position as mayor, or actually at any other point in your career, where you've applied a specific skill you learned on expedition with us at British Exploring Society. She's obviously planning ahead here. And what was the most useful skill you took from your experience?
It was behave. I'll tell you what. Something I've learned from that. I learned the bad way, right? So when we were climbing up the mountain to get to do our midnight sit, we were on a rope of 4, and the guy, I can't believe I did this, but the guy in front of me was struggling pulling his sled. So I thought the best way to motivate someone was just to shout at them and tell them they weren't doing a good job. And I remember, and I learned very quickly, but it just, shouting and bawling, and I was probably trying to be like, I don't know what I was thinking, but it was just showing the immaturity I took with me that actually got kind of walked and beasted at me when we were there. And I learned from that's not the way to motivate people. The best thing I could have done then was actually say, if you're struggling with your sled, can I put something in mine? If you're struggling with your backpack, can I put something in mine? Servant leadership, not oppressive leadership. I'm almost embarrassed to share that story. I don't share it too often, but it's still with me today. I'm 48 now. I was 18, 19 when I was in Svalbard, and you see it's still with me. And it's, you learn from your errors as much as you do your successes.
Do you think you could have risen to the position you now hold without the impact of your experience with British Exploring Society?
Well, other things would have happened. So I wouldn't want to say it was everything. I mean, I think basically the inputs, the inputs accumulate, don't they? So BES wasn't in and of itself the thing, but certainly what it did was give me access to other things, right? So I would never point to a single intervention. Like my teacher, Mr. Jennings, was hugely significant, but insignificant in context. And it's how all those things begin to interact that and create the broader narrative and the trajectory that matters. So they accumulate through life. But without doubt, it was one of the seminal moments. I mean, I can remember the experience with my wispy beard, landing back at Heathrow and walking through the airport with my rucksack, porridge stains on my blue and black fleece that I still remember I had, and looking around and just thinking, who are you people? I've just been in the Arctic. You haven't. And it wasn't a snobbery. It was a kind of an almost inability to comprehend life back in the UK, and a sense of the smallness of it and the mundaneness of it. I remember being on a coach coming back from Heathrow to Bristol and looking out at the cars and almost despising the cars, like not hating people, but it was a mismatch, but it was so healthy for me. It was a different view of who I was. I may have had other opportunities to develop that, and I may have gone on a different trajectory, but yeah, it was massively significant.
What legacy do you hope to leave by the time you step down as our president? And please, no hurry. We'd like to use as long as possible. But is there anything particularly you'd like to feel that you've achieved with us?
But the whole point of tonight was about fairer access, how we can explore how we improve fair access to the wilderness. I use that term because I was watching a fantastic YouTube little talk the other day of a guy talking about the wildness and getting into that contained reality, but how we can share these kind of opportunities out more often. And it is about BES, but also the wider conversation. National Trust, I know, take this challenge on. How do they get a wider range of people on their National Trust and National Trust parks is something that they've touched on in the past. And I was like, Michelle Obama talked about being a poppy seed in a rice bowl, if you've read her, or poppy seed in a bowl of rice, if you've read her autobiography. I was like that in Svalbard. I mean, I literally was, what were we about? kind of like the only black kid around, you know, and I felt like I was one of the only comprehensive school kids around. I know there were others, but it just everyone was posh and I wasn't. So we need to change that, both for individuals, but for wider society's purposes as well. And dare I say, as we need to win a democratic mandate for the scale and pace of change we need to go on to make sure we don't kill the planet. So the more people we can create the opportunity to engage with the wider planet, the better.